Easy Delivery Co. is a game dripping with ambience from the second it boots up. The hum of computer fans, the numbers running down the screen, the jingles that feel right out of a Fruitiger Aero post or a liminal 2000s nostalgia core edit, mechanical clicks and beeps that feel like they belong to Foley recordings of an 80s science fiction anime. The choice to run it by default in 5:4 aspect ratio and the added CRT effect to further the retro feel. This game could almost pass as a lost media PS1 era game that is the topic of some YouTube video essay. The user interface you are greeted with is simple. Its bare boneness makes it feel reminiscent of games from your childhood memories. It almost feels as if the game's controls are probably explained somewhere in a non-existent game manual that you do not own. The look of the game is very in line with the current indie trend of rejecting realism and high-definition art styles in favor of pixelated and shitty textures that are now an intentional aesthetic choice rather than a hardware limitation. The PS1 textures are very in right now. The entire experience of playing this game for the opening hour feels like being transported back to your childhood, where every new game was like a mystery. Its controls a puzzle, objectives vague, and you would treat it more like a sandbox than it actually was. It really has a strong start and leaves a very good first impression, especially from the artistic choices. The game allows you to do just a handful of things: drive your truck to deliver packages, interact with a few NPCs along the way, and use just a couple of items. During your task, you keep an eye on your energy and fuel meters, and that's about it. There are some other mechanics like building a campfire, cooking, fishing, and using duct tape. Other than that, for your navigation, you get the pickup location when you select the job. After that, it's all on your memory, or using signboards or inferring your location from where you are as the map does not tell you so. A choice I quite like, to be honest. When your energy runs out or you succumb to the cold by straying too far from shelter and you are not able to make it back in time, well, you die and are seemingly put into this purgatory-esque series of dinless dark corridors. There is no punishment for dying, just time lost and then thrown right back into making your endless deliveries. This makes it feel like the gameplay loop itself is purgatory, an escape where death is forbidden. The environments are a mix of endless snow and towering mountains, with roads that snake around and connect you to a handful of small towns nestled in the valleys and perched upon the slopes. The towns seem cold and dead. Silence looms over them. The only slightly welcoming lights you see are the various stores, open with their lights on, open with their lights on for their unseen residents. Only sign of life that populate this quiet landscape are the flocks of crows, flying away as you approach them. They seem both innocent and ominous, ever watching your twisting drives along the hills. You never encounter anything alive outside with the exception of the crows and your friend MK. The landscape is lonely but peaceful. It is cut off from whatever lies beyond the peaks of these mountains. The sun never shines. Only a faint glow permeates through the clouds, illuminating the days. Even that is taken away by the frequent fog or storm that rolls in, obscuring your vision to merely a few meters in front of you, making you drive a little more cautiously than usual. The little light you have is gone by the time nighttime creeps in. Although I do wish nights in this game were darker than they are now. Right now you can drive around without your headlights on pretty fine, but I wish the game made it darker so that the headlights would feel necessary while also adding to the atmosphere. The environment truly captures the isolation of small snow-covered towns extremely beautifully. The only thing that accompanies you on your deliveries, your only friend in a way, is the music. The tracks are a modern mix of breakcore-ish D&B and jungle that strangely do not feel out of place here. Tracks like Sender Unknown, Easy Delivery or whatever, Sub-Zero Shipping, Freight and Freight Across the Galaxy, if I recall correctly, are all highlights with special shout out to the saxophone on Easy Delivery. It is exactly the kind of music that I would put on in a playlist while driving endless laps in a racing game. There is, and I hate this word, but ludonarrative harmony in the way music is implemented into the game. The sound gets faint and drowned out by the wind outside as you exit your truck, which means it is canon that your cat delivery character actually does listen to TNB while making deliveries, which is kind of funny in my opinion. I like how you shut out the sounds of the harsh weather by blasting songs inside your truck and creating your own little space that gets disturbed when you step out and face the elements outside. But also it serves as a sound of comfort that grows louder as you approach your truck from a venture a little too far. A quick critique, this game being too short is kind of my only major complaint in general. This game is 4 to 5-ish hour game, and I really would not mind it being 2 or even 3 times this length. Although that length should ideally introduce additional mechanics, NPCs, locations, or quests. I don't know something, I figure something out, I'm not a game dev. I think it would have been better if the mystery was something that players find out on their own instead of being guided along by quests. It would make it feel longer without actually adding something extra. It's a good game, but it can be so much more, and maybe in a sequel if that is ever on the table, I have no idea. And it's made by I think one guy, so good job one guy. The sleeping towns and their emptiness reminds me of waking up early, like 3 a.m. early, and going out when the whole world is sleeping. Seeing places that are supposed to be filled with cars and people completely empty. Feels like existing alone in an empty world. It is a strange feeling, and slightly uneasy. The small towns are dominated by the corporate overhand of the Easy Co. Its branding is present in every corner. We have Easy Mart, Easy Auto, Easy Eats, the titular Easy Delivery Co., even the vending machines and the drink inside said machines. The news is also brought to you by Easy News Station. The complete dominance by Easy Co. makes it feel like a cult preying on the residents of the small town, with intentions probably not altruistic. The game does not have an eerie or haunting atmosphere initially, even though at first glance the Silent Hill looking fog might suggest otherwise. It is quite cozy, in fact, but the cracks start to show not too long in. As you travel between towns making your deliveries, you soon notice that the fact that each outlet of every store has the same NPC no matter what town you go to. Bakery always has Ellie, bar is always run by Fives, Easy Flower is always manned by the nervous florist, and so on. The conversations also maintain continuity with neither the NPCs or your character mentioning this oddity. I love the NPC conversations. There isn't much, but it's cute, especially the romance between the depot guy and Ellie. You soon learn how things used to be better before the fishing town got taken over, and EasyCo built the hydro dam. Speaking of which, these three structures that stand out from all the small towns of this game are the hydro dam, the factory, and the train lines. These structures are like black monoliths, contrasting starkly against the pale white snow of the mountains, standing tall with defiance and almost imposing themselves over the hills. They do not try to blend in with the environment. They fight against it, as if to assert their dominance. First, the train tracks. They seem indifferent to the world below them. They seem to pass uncaringly over the sleeping towns, connecting to unseen and unknown destinations, with disregard for what comes between. Second, the hydro dam. Singular black block of a building. Reminds me of the company building from Lethal Company. The featureless tower mass of this building makes it seem otherworldly. It instinctively feels out of place in this valley. It feels like an intruder sucking away the purity of the hills and polluting them with just its sight alone. Third, the factory. Standing alone, stretching to God knows where. Its structure does not make any sense, does not speak any purpose. It invokes feelings of megalophobia and it defies utilitarian logic. There is an alien feel to it, as if it was not built by the regular NPCs of this game, but by something unknown, for something unknown. These buildings are simply too hostile to their surroundings, too unwelcoming. If apathy were a building, it would be these. They are almost brutalist in nature. They remind me of brutalist architecture, architecture that is deliberately made to feel, not designed for humans to be uncomfortable to humans. I see these buildings as a good representation for EasyCo, indirectly speaking of its nature. A corporation that is an invader, that is so large and omnipresent that the residents are powerless against the enforcement of its will. This is also seen in the slight mentions of the themes you get from conversation with the NPCs. Topics like destroying the environment and AI replacing people, which is ironic in this game's case. The insides of these buildings are just as strange and bare bones as the outside. The inside of the factory is an endless sprawl of corridors beneath the catwalk. They feel eerily similar to the Death Purgatory. The music in this part is amazing. In the final conversation, at least the feelings it invokes, is in my opinion the highlight of this mystery-esque aspect of this game. It is dripping with sadness, weight, and emotion that is hard to describe. Finally, as you reach the end, or maybe the center of the factory, you see a singular laptop with wires attached to it coming into view out of the darkness, almost like a Lovecraftian entity. Here you face the final choice of the ending. I enjoy drives. In this game, yes, but I'm speaking just as much, if not more, about the real world. Driving is a transitory period. A lot of the times when you're driving, you're not exactly doing any work except from moving from point A to B. Point B is where you actually need to do the real work, whether that be attending school or working at your office or having dinner, etc. To use a bad game analogy, it is like an IRL loading screen, an elevator, a time in between two activities. But there is much more that we love about it. That is the focal point of a game like this. In the focal point of driving endless laps in a racing game, driving aimlessly in an open world game. I do think that might be a common gaming experience that a lot of us might share. It forces you to accept being in the moment rather than give you a dopamine hit. It puts you into a lull, makes you feel relaxed. It gives you moments to reflect but also exist. Games like Journey, Abzu, and various walking simulators are appealing because of this very reason. When all you are doing is walking, the only thing to pay attention to is your surroundings. Sometimes the journey is the best part. Even virtual worlds in video games manage to provide this. I'm not trying to say that traveling in video games is a one-to-one alternative to real travel. They they just provide the same similar experience on a computer and cut away some of the baggage of doing it in the real world, like cost of fuel and food, accommodations, running into serial killers and falling off a cliff, etc. Whether you're driving yourself or are a passenger in a train or taxi, it is peaceful. It is not exciting, but it is fulfilling. No one to talk to, no interruptions, just a time to observe the scenery that passes by and reflect upon your thoughts. The music acts as a background noise. I like driving with music, but without music is nice too. Just you and your thoughts and the sounds of the car. The engine, the tires, the brakes, the wind blowing through as you roll down the windows and the whoosh of the trees as you drive past. Turning off the music does allow you to embrace the other stimulus of the natural world a lot more. Once you know how to drive, most of the time you do it on instinct. You follow the curves of the road, managing the acceleration and braking as required, without giving it too much thought. It is a peaceful, slow burn. All parts of the journey are enjoyable in their own right. The initial excitement of having just begun a trip, leaving behind a familiar place in comfort, heading towards the unknown. The lull of the middle section, where you gaze outside and let your mind wander. Time passes uneventfully, but steadily. And finally, reaching the destination. As the silhouette of your final destination becomes visible, you must pull out your map to navigate the exact location of where you need to go. What seemed so far away when you began your journey is now in sight. It feels like before it did not exist and now it has materialized. And then the end of your journey. For some, it may be satisfying. For others, it may evoke a feeling of emptiness. Maybe I'll write about this topic in better, you know, maybe I'll write about this topic properly someday, but this is what came to my mind right now. Also, the question of why did I write so much for such a short game? Well, I guess this is just exercise for my writing. This game is not the greatest game of all time, nor is it my favorite. So why did it warrant me writing this much and making this video? Well, partially it is because this game makes you engage in something that is honestly quite mundane. It is still a game and is fun, don't get me wrong. But recently, I've been spending more time addicted to the dopamine from constant stimulation more than I'd like to admit. I'll talk about it the day when I'm completely free from the urge to scroll social media. But right now, consider this somewhat creative endeavor of making this video as my attempt of fixing something in my life. Talking too much, overthinking, and overcomplicating simple things is often a detriment. I feel like I've rambled longer than I needed to, so I'll leave this off with a final drive without saying anything. Hope you have a nice day.